dedicated to the dreamers. Yeah, life in the grind. It's dedicated to the dreamers. It's life in the grind. Dedicated to the dreamers.
Dream big, have faith, work hard. Never quit, put your trust in God. Stay true and remember who you are. Never forget how you made it this far. Dream big, have faith, work hard. Never quit, put your trust in God. Stay true and remember who you are. Never forget how you made it this far. I feel like this world is trying to break my soul. I say no, I say no, I say no, you can't take it now. Come a long way, but still so far to go. Yeah, I know I can make it. I guess they forgot about me.
What's going down, everybody? Welcome to the Root of It All show. Jody McGarity Jr. coming to you with another episode. And this is a special episode because this individual right here that you see on the screen is dear to my heart. I got my son, my oldest child, Tarale. Well, it says it on there, Tarale Gavon Murry. He's only being called that when he's in trouble, but he's got it on the screen. It is my boy. I'm glad to have him on the show. How you doing, son?
I'm doing good, Daddy. How you?
I'm doing great, man. It's been a blessing to be able to get to this point in time where this new endeavor that I'm taking, being able to use these talents, these gifts, this thing that they call the voice. You belong on radio type deal, so giving this thing a try. Trusting the Lord with it, but other than that, it's been a great ride. But real excited about this, man. You and I get to interview you in this process, man. So it's been a good journey, good ride. Who knows? I might get your sisters on here for an episode or two.
And technically, this won't be the first interview. I know you interviewed me as a kid, asking me what I did at school and why I got in trouble. But this is not the same situation.
Well, that was more parental interviews. There's been plenty of those. Those are actually undocumented interviews. But you're right. Yeah, you're definitely right about that. But good, man. Just for our listeners, man, for this evening, who does not know who you are, please give people a little synopsis of who is Tarale Gavon Murry.
I am one half of Jody McGarity Jr., one half of Yvette Deshaun Murray from Gavon. But I am currently pursuing my PhD at the University of Michigan. I did my master's at Texas A&M in sport management. Then my undergrad and my bachelor's at the University of Texas at Austin in accounting. I got my degree in accounting. I am what I've learned because of academia. I'm a pragmatist, so I'm a person that understands problems and people's different viewpoints of people, but ultimately try to combine that to come up with a solution that'll fit, hopefully appease as many people as possible. Definitely a believer in Christ. And so I'm the oldest of 9. Let's see, what else? I'm learning how unique of an individual I am, thanks to my parents and my upbringing, but also just in general, learning and growing individual. And so pretty excited.
Awesome. Definitely. And just to clarify, he is the oldest of 9. This is true, but all 9 are not mine. This is between his mother and I during that time. And just to give you all just a little background story about this young man. This young man came into the world when I was 16 years old. And it wasn't ideal, but through that process, it took a lot of growing up for me, really quick and really fast, through the decisions that I made as a teenage boy back at that time. And in this process, it hasn't been easy for Tarale. I can tell you that now. Coming into this world with teenage parents, for the most part, his mother was more being able to be an adult before I was able to be an adult because she had graduated out of high school already. I still was just becoming a junior and still feeling myself, trying to know who I am as an individual, but really had to grow up. And I really had a great man in my father who told me, no, you're going to be responsible and be a father to this kid. And I think real quickly I was able to come to that realization real early on into my fatherhood. Realizing how I felt, not having my father a part of my life growing up for, my adolescent years. When I got into high school, I was able to form that relationship with my father, and God was able to redeem that time. But this young man right here constantly stayed on my mind once, I really, came aware that I did not want him to go through what I went through, the feelings that I felt not having my dad around, the hatred that I had in my heart for a very long time. I didn't want my son to experience that. We're going to share in this episode how my son actually felt, because even though I had that in my heart and my mind, he had to experience that, unfortunately, to a certain degree. And in this, we hope that this episode is a blessing to many people of how God was able to redeem the time between he and I, but it also as well, just a wonderful job that his mother did raising him along with his stepfather. So we're going to talk about this in a couple of episodes. We're not going to be able to fit it all into one. This might be a 3-parter. It might be a 10-parter. I don't know. Because once this boy get to talking, you will be blessed. Trust me. I can tell you, he can go on for days. Absolutely. But in this, let's talk about it. Let's get right into the nuts and bolts, son, and talk about your remembrance growing up. What were the things that you were really fond of growing up as a kid, but also talk about the missing pieces with the lack of relationship that you and I, we had a relationship here, but then all of a sudden there was an absence, right? Talk about that a little bit for our listeners.
No, honestly, and when we were talking about scheduling this, in my brain, one thing as a child that stays with me to this day, so it's a part of who I am. I think a lot. Thank you, Daddy, for that gene, that trait. No, but I think a lot, and it manifests in ways that I literally I think out conversations, and then it branches off to multiple conversations or different outcomes from those conversations that I have with one person. I think I remember sharing this with you when I was in high school, and I was like, something along the lines like I kind of anticipated or thought this conversation. He was like, and you were like, yeah, don't anticipate nothing with me. But that being said, is when I kind of thought about like, what would I share? Something that was very impactful or monumental, if you will. I guess to start off with is, I think maybe I was 7 or 8. It was maybe the second or third time where I was supposed to see you, pick you up, or you're supposed to pick me up. And I remember Mom was on the phone. I think she gave me the phone. She was like, hey, son, I'm not going to be able to go to work or something like that. Along the lines, basically, at 7, 8, what I understood was wouldn't be able to see you. And I remember looking out the window and kind of started crying or whatever. And I tried not to cry too much. Just some tears came down my eyes. And then I remember either my mom told you something or somehow you ended up finding out. And okay, so that's actually, it's 2 different things. But one, you had a conversation with me the next time it was actually at HT when we got picked up. We were like in the parking lot next to the cemetery or whatever. You kind of gave me your story like, hey, son, I had to experience these things and, I had to kind of toughen up and stuff like that. And so for me, honestly, that was probably not the most positive thing that I took from, because it was like, and at that moment, I remember saying, well, I'm never going to cry again because of my dad. Like, I'm not going to worry about this type thing. So I would say that is one of something that I had to like learn through, but definitely carried where it was like, okay, I'm not gonna be upset. My expectations of if people tell me something, and it's something I'm even realizing most recently, like, oh, that's right, I forget that I hear people when they say stuff, but I either don't believe them or I don't hold them to it. Cause like, hey, one, I've learned both in maturing that life happens and, responsibilities come up. So I've been able to apply those actual like elements to it. But for the longest time, it was just like, people aren't going to come through and stuff. And so that was probably one of the toughest parts. But ultimately, at least what you may hear, as much of as a kid can admire their dad, that was definitely the case. Just trying to do everything like you. And obviously, I've probably perfected or mastered some of it. No, but definitely the fond memories would being able to spend time with you. Definitely remember the times when we would, now I don't know if statute of limitations over. So when you'd have to sneak me into the dorms at HT and push me over the fence for Huff. I think Huff put me over the fence, one of the others. So climb the fence. I also remember a time where I was in the student lounge at the dorm, and he told me to sit in one of the chairs or stay over there, whatever. He went to the elevator, and these dudes were playing foosball. And I didn't know what it was at the time, but I was like, a game. So I went and watched. And I remember I got like hit in the stomach or something like that because I was too close. And I was like, oh. And I turned over and you were like, I told you to stay right here. So a lot of good fond memories, but I know just starting off like that, I think that was a very impactful moment where I know I was, disappointed, hurt, sad, whatever. I couldn't see you. And what ended up resulting of like what I took myself was like, okay, I'm not going to cry anymore. I'm not going to feel any type of disappointment or pain or whatever, because my dad can't see me. Later on became understandable of like, oh, things happen. But I think that was probably something where it was like anything towards animosity or frustration. That was probably the first time I remember it happening. But yeah.
And so in that, how deep, go deep if you can. You said you had the animosity, but how deep did that go? So, for me, like I said, I grew up, I had a lot of hatred in my heart. I really did. Not having your pawpaw in my life for a certain part. And then, realizing that there was a huge void that other folks had, your uncles and your aunt, that they were able to have, my dad 24 hours a day. And again, this is just coming from how I felt at that time. What can you share with the listeners about how you felt during our absence, or me being inconsistent as a father?
And I'll say this, this is the other memorable moment at the age of 7 or 8, maybe even younger, but I know for the longest time I was haunted by the fact that I made a decision to do something right. So it was along those lines, and I'll get to like addressing, how more deeper, but the second like very memorable moment about being disappointed and what I ended up doing from it was one night, and I've already prayed to God multiple times, forgive me for this. One night when I was like 6 or 7, I was so mad at God or whatever that I was like, I'm not gonna pray to God, I'm gonna pray to Satan. And I was like, right? And I was like, because this hurts so bad, I don't want that. And so 2 things happened. I said, I don't want to ever do this to my children or have my children feel this way, not knowing what that all entailed. But it was like, I just don't want to ever have my children feel this way. And so I literally said like a 5-second prayer, and I was like, okay, God, I know I'm sorry. But I don't want my kids to feel this. And so those very like 2 like standout moments where on one hand, by the grace of God, that at 6, 7, whatever, I resolved to say, I'm not going to do this to my kids. But at the same time, it was just like, if you said something, it was like, I hear you, Daddy, and we'll see if it happens type of stuff. And I think for a long time, there actually was doubt, or there was like, it was doubt. There was both hope and doubt, where it was like, I hope he comes through, but we'll see, probably not, or whatever. So I don't know, I can't think right now like how that maybe affected anything else, but it was just in my mind the notion of like, he may not be able to follow through on something, and not so much that I couldn't count on you, because there was times when I did come to you like in middle school, it was like, let me just tell my dad this because I need him, and so that's what was supposed to happen. But maybe it could have hindered it from happening more, just because of the doubt, like whatever. But that's what my initial thought is with that. Yeah.
Very, very, very appreciative of that. And here's the thing, some of these things I'm hearing for the very first time. So to understand what this young man was going through is one of those things where if we want to look to improve, we have to be able to take that constructive criticism, to be able to hear that feedback of, especially as parents, how our children felt growing up. Sometimes they may not feel that they're comfortable enough, or even feel, that they're, even aware of how much they can share of how they felt during that time. But coming with this helps with a whole great deal. And I believe, with our relationship has been good at where we are to this point, but it's only going to make our relationship stronger hearing this. Because, one of the things is, you'll hear me say, and I'll say this now, son, I'm sorry for all the hurts and pains that I've caused you. It's not the first time I've said it, but I won't never stop saying it, right? Because we as parents and always make mistakes, and we have to make these things right with our kids. So definitely this has been a blessing so far. Episode 1 is on fire already. Let's go. All right. Well, in that, you talked about up into the part of middle school. Tell me what was going through your mind, and tell our listeners what was going on through your mind during the process of thinking about things. Because again, there was a gap where we went years and there was no contact. So talk to the listeners about how you were feeling and what were you thinking during that time.
during that time, try to think, wanting to see you, using what information I had. And if there were any questions, I would fill in the gap. This actually became a pattern of mine just throughout life that I've had to realize, work out. But if I didn't really ask questions, so I took the don't talk back type thing to the extreme. So I didn't ask anyone questions. If I didn't understand something, it was like, well, they said this, so I figured it out. That's what it is. So I think during that time when we didn't talk, whatever, like the last thing I remembered of why I couldn't see you, whatever, we couldn't spend time. It was like, well, I guess that's what it is. And so I think at the point in time, I maybe got used to it or whatever, okay with it. This maybe happened before middle school, but I did remember like there was a period where I actually ended up finding, because I was like, let me see if I can find my dad. So that's when I went through the phone book. One day I was just at the house, and I remember, the church we used to go to, Great New Life, or the church they would go to, it was like, Great New Life. What was the pastor's name? What was the pastor's name? Billy John. Right. So I went through, found Red Bluff or whatever the address was, found the number, called, and I got your number. So that was me, taking initiative, which is something that definitely my mom instilled in me. Mm-hmm. But after that, during that space and time, I feel like I just kind of answered it with, okay, stuff's going on, and I still have to do my responsibilities. I still have to work. I still have to do school. I have to do whatever I have things to focus on. So I think there was a period where we didn't talk much. I would think about like, I wonder how things are going, but kind of became, I guess, not careless, but indifferent. And that would explain, especially up until middle school when I started coming visiting more often. It was just like, this kind of is what it is. I didn't really ask questions, which is something I've had to overcome, is that I tend to not ask questions a lot. I just take the last thing that was said and just go forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we can sometimes get things misconstrued as parents, but not, having a open door policy, right? We can sometimes regurgitate soil that we were raised in, right? That we was nourished in. And, back in those times, it was stated, you better not say nothing. When I say something, you better not say nothing else, because that's talking back, and you'll catch a Joe Jackson in a minute, get a backhand and gone from there. But, it's always been to the part to where during that time when we, were not, able to see each other, talk to each other, it was the roughest moment as a father. And that was difficult because knowing that, I have responsibility to be able to, along with your mother, to raise you up, right? It was tough. And the one thing I can share before we start asking more questions to T is that, early on, when a lot of things were going on and the things that I shared with him, I was just sharing certain things that I was raised up on. So this was, without any type of foundation of faith in being a Christian. This was before that time. Again, I'm not making excuses, but when you have a foundation, especially when it comes to our faith of who we believe in Christ, it gives you a different perspective. And it lets you know that no, not all things parentally, taught to you is bad, but it has to be done in perspective. It has to be done out of love, and especially with the correction piece. So that piece I had to really learn. That piece was really gut wrenching. And I think because of, the choices that were made, again, not making any excuses for anything, but the choices that were made, these were the unfortunate consequences that led to these type things. And it's not to point the finger at anyone. More than anything, I blame myself, because here I am, a 16-year-old kid bringing a child into the world when I didn't have any type of right preparations in order to do that. Right. And so in this, these are the kind of consequences that come forth. I have here my oldest kid having to go through this same journey path of the way he felt emotionally, psychologically, the challenges that he had to work through. The same thing that I did, but I did not stop it, right? I allowed it to go on because I was in my feelings, as Drake said, right? Going through this trend of, sex outside of marriage, things of that nature. And these kind of things bring these type of repercussions. And we got to understand that, especially in our society today, when we think about a lot of kids who are hurting, a lot of people are not putting thought to their kids, whether they're not born yet, they're not thinking about future kids, or even their current kids. They're not putting that into perspective. So in that, as you, because I remember that day vividly, phone rang, had no clue the number, just picked it up. And so when I heard your voice for the first time, I wanted to cry at that time. But I was too cool for school. That wasn't going to happen. I'm just like, well, what is going on? Right. And in that, once you heard me answer that phone, talk to us, how that felt, and then just take it from there.
Honestly, it was like, the one was like, okay, it worked. Like I put forth effort. I did whatever. So like it actually worked. So honestly, all of it was positive, right? But I think it really reinforced like, oh, if you do, if you work, if you put your mind to something, if you actually go out and kind of do the research, or you try to find a way, like it, there will be rewards. And so I know at that moment it was like, okay, yes, like I did all this, and I got to talk to my dad. Two, I think maybe there was a silent, like not doubt, but it was like a question of, I don't know, maybe as a kid it was just reassuring, where it was like, okay, like talk to my dad, he seems happy to talk to me, he loves me, like, okay, everything's good. It's just there are some other things that are going on that I don't know. That so for me, I would say I didn't place much blame on you, or think about blame on you as far as how things turned out, or me having a visitation or whatever case it be. It was like, oh, okay, this is how stuff turns out sometimes, and it's based on people's decisions. But for me, it was never blame or anything like that. And yeah, I think that was a blessing that I was able to not place blame on really anyone. A lot of the frustration before I had the language to know that it was about a process, or it was about other things, not particularly as a person. A lot of any frustration that came up, it was just maybe about something, one, not going my way, two, me not understanding or having an answer that seemed good enough. But it was never no frustration. So yeah, when I heard your voice, and it was like, I think we ended up talking about planning to meet another time. So it was like, there was that excitement and hope about it and stuff. So
yeah, absolutely. And in that, from that time on, I mean, time just began to be redeemed. And talk to the listeners about what that process did for you from the time we were able to reunite up until really, I mean, the point of where you are right now today.
It was very important. It was important on so many fronts. Important from the potentially obvious that, oh, you have your biological father, you have your father in your life, someone you admired, looked up to the age of 4 or 5, and then the space. So it's like, now you have that, you have the role model that by then you were saved. So like now you have a man of God who's growing in his walk in faith, but then also been able to train up a child in the way he should go. So those are the, like, maybe the obvious, like, oh yes, of course. I also think what was very impactful, particularly from then till now, is me being able to experience and witness and see, 2 marriages, right? You and stepmom, and then my mom and stepdad, like be able to see 2 of those, and not comparing them in the sense of against each other, but just being able to see 2 different types of relationships. You being very affectionate, but very, much like, like these things are like, you prioritize things and you like stuck to it. And I think I definitely just developed that, where I prioritize things, I'm gonna stick to it. So I might forget some stuff. I may not respond. I may not talk, but being able to see that. So that combined with extreme affection to, with my stepdad, it was, he would be very conversational, very impersonal, but maybe didn't see like affection as much. So it was like, oh, being a Black man, it's very multidimensional, very dynamic. There isn't one stereotype. There isn't one thing that, a box that society may place Black men into. So being able to see that was very helpful. Being able to see how you treated my sisters. I think the relationship, or the way I view my relationship to women or Black women, is because you were such a great role model for that. And so that was very important. stepdad never did anything physical violent or anything like that, but it was like to see you as my father display that type of love towards women, Black women. It was like, it's very important for me, especially with how I view myself as a Black man now. And just along the lines that there was just so many things there. I remember one thing that you did, and you probably maybe said it a handful of times, but they were very impactful, was when you acknowledged my intelligence. I remember one time vividly, my stepmom was like, I think she asked me a question. No, maybe she didn't ask me a question. Or maybe she did ask me a question, and your response was, girl, that boy's a brainiac. And so it was like, I mean, I still remember that to this day, because it's like, oh yeah, my dad thinks I'm smart. And so that's one thing to highlight. But there were so many things that when I think of like conceptualize like who I am as a man or as a Black man or a man of God, it's like, you are the cloud of witnesses that I have of like, how should I live this life? How do I love? How do I combat? Because being able to see that, you aren't a small human being, you're not. And so one, seeing how the world engages with you, and then how you still make the decision to then engage. And, I remember the stories you shared about, you get in fights sometimes where you have to like rough things up, but it was like hearing your growth and maturity, but also obviously seeing a majority of just you carrying yourself as a large Black man. It's like, it helped inform me of like, oh, this is how I should move. This is what I need to be aware of. And when people assume the opposite, because apparently outside the world of athletics, I'm a large person as well. But when they assume the opposite, but then they get, kind, sweet, thoughtful, whatever this may be, it's like, oh no, because my dad also, who's bigger than me, is just as kind, sweet, affectionate, thoughtful. And so there's just a lot of things that are very important. But I would say probably first and foremost through faith, but everything centers around being a Black man.
Yeah, that's all right, man. That is awesome. Awesome. Very good. So before we get ready to end part one of this episode, wanted to just really have you expound on, the importance of, for those who are hurting, those who don't have relationships with their father or maybe with their mother. You've had classmates in the past who had similar upbringings like you did. You also had, folks in college, dealing with so many things, and we'll kind of, trickle into that in part two of our talk. But talk to everybody of how, you were able to see those differences or the similarities that is for being fatherless or motherless from your peers, and how it was able to keep you focused. And as again, once our time was redeemed and we started forming that relationship and building our relationship, how did that give you confidence to be able to, speak positive life into others?
That's great. Great question. I'm thinking of 100 different things. I would say underlying approach, not approach, but something that's very fundamental, was not only from the word and understanding and learning, how God loves and the relationship that God and Christ wants to have with me, with his children, but being able to see it with both my mom and me and my mom's relationship, but then even you and me, but also you with my sisters. And so it's like, what is love? Okay, God is love. All right, how does love actually manifest? How does love look? And tying in the fact that as humans, we're gonna kind of mess it up, whatever, or we're striving towards that, or we have a choice to strive towards that, right? So it's like any mistakes, faults, or any challenges, whatever, I was able to understand, like, okay, what does that mean with love? So with my teammates or friends with similar situations, I would just listen to, where is the absence of love? And so it's like, oh, my parent isn't there, or it's really challenging there. So it's like, but how is the absence of love manifesting potentially? I think what helped me with being a positive part of other people's lives is I actually just ask them questions to even understand them more and better. This is when the Bible talks about, Christ looked upon and like knew that person, or God knows a person. And it's like, what does it mean to know someone? No, I don't have the spiritual ability to do all that stuff, but it's like, oh, I can ask questions. I can suspend my thoughts, suspend my assumptions, and just ask them questions about, one, how they make them feel. And then two, what I've learned even now, is, what they would like. But during that time, it was like, okay, understand your dad's not there, or your mom is not there, or you don't have a good relationship. And so it's like, how does that make you feel? And how does that lead to some of the decisions you make or want to make, stuff like that. So I think thinking about love first and foremost, and having the example, obviously from the Bible, but then from both my parents in two different households. So it wasn't the picture perfect mom, dad loves their child in the same house. It was like, love is complicated, or has to be complicated just because of fallen man. But starting with that, and then really getting to like ask questions and understanding, what a person actually feels, what they think, and then also at the end of the day, like what they would like. And I think that's the way that to help them say, okay, and that's achievable. Once you like help, or I realized once I've helped some of my friends, Adriana Martinez is a great example. Rough high school experience, for her. We even joke about it to today. Now she's married, has a child on the way. She's debt free out of college, stuff like that. So, but it was like the time we would have to like, I would, listen to her and then we would talk. It was just about, reaffirming her, but also helping her see that, there are practical steps you can take to change something. And at the same time, you're just being there, show love and stuff like that. So that's try to condense it, but as you said, I can go on. So
yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Adriana. What's going down, Adriana? Definitely glad to hear that all is well with her, that she has a family, she has that spouse, and is thriving in this world. Before we go, what is some parting wisdom that you can share with our listeners as we prepare for episode or part 2 of this interview that you want to share? There's a whole lot of folks that are out there hurting. Especially coming from this COVID season. We're still dealing with the trinkets of it and everything, so we're not fully out of it. But life is so far moving forward outside of this. And there's a whole lot of folks that hurt from this. A lot of things rose, man, a lot of statistics. Domestic violence rose, child abuse rose. Some things that I'll share just from my career working with kids. I'm dealing with kids right now who have been displaced from their homes. And they're living out of offices, because, there's just not there's not enough shelters. There's not enough foster homes to be able to take care of the plethora of kids that is removed from their families. So what are some words of encouragement that you can give to our listeners as we prepare for part 2?
Definitely, there's a lot. And so, it's tough with all that's happened. And from my position, being so blessed and fortunate to say what words of wisdom or encouragement, rather, I understand that like whatever a person's going through, like it is tough. Like to acknowledge and affirm, like, oh, this actually is tough. Because to be told, oh, you can get over it, and this, maybe sometimes maybe a person may feel invalidated. So it's like don't want anyone to feel invalidated about their experience, about what they're going through. So honestly, it's like, what you're going through, it is tough, it is challenging. And how you're feeling is very much like real and valid and important to acknowledge for yourself. And even to give yourself a time and space to experience that. So allow yourself to experience the emotion, whether it's the frustration, even the anger, disappointment, whatever case may be. And in doing that, also trust and believe, have faith that that God has a way for you, or has already created a way. It's not like he's dividing the plan right now, but he actually has a way for you that he will not only just use this experience now, but allow you to learn more, right? If you allow him to, allow you to learn more about yourself and learn more about, who he is and how he operates to get out of your situation. And one random fact, which may have anything to do with this, but there actually is either a statistician or someone who deals with math. And he actually found, based on like the definition of the miracle that, he defined, was that on average, every person will experience one miracle a month. Like by the mathematical statistical term, like because there are so many different events happening that on average, a person will experience at least one miracle a month. So it's like, oh, wait on a miracle. It's like, there's one coming each month. And so I kind of jokingly was like, oh, that's why God is like, don't worry, just trust in me, and definitely once a month, at least, I'm going to provide something. So I don't know, but understand your experience is real, your emotions are valid. And at the same, and with that you can still make it to the next day. right? To have an opportunity to make the next day. And God is something else. He's been very important in my life. And even with my relationship with him now, I'm like, I got you, God. One, you did a great job. The church I grew up in, Great Life, did a marvelous job of really instilling, the word and the Bible and scripture. Shout out to my mom who taught me the concept of flashcards. So I made flashcards of the Bible verses. So it's like, even where I am now, I still remember probably the 10 or 12 verses that I was like committed to heart. And that's been very important for me. But again, I'll end on that because I keep going.
All right. Shout out to T's mom, Yvette Gavon, with those flashcards. We're going to start with part 2 coming up in the next episode that we have. But we're going to stop here. Hopefully this has been an encouragement to those who were able to see this. I know it's pretty lengthy, but we wanted to be able to ensure that we keep these episodes separated so it's not long and drawn out. But definitely, hopefully this encouraged you all. If this does encourage you, if you're on YouTube watching this, give this a thumbs up, like, share, subscribe, go tell somebody. Definitely, if it was a blessing to you, definitely comment in the sections below, even on our Facebook page. We greatly appreciate that. On YouTube, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you can be able to be updated. So when we hit part 2 and any other episodes in the future, you'll be in tune. So we greatly appreciate that. If you appreciate what we're doing here at The Root of It All, definitely click on that link in the description, the link to the Patreon. Give us some support to help us continue to be able to bring some life-changing episodes as we continue to help, encourage one another, inspire one another, and equip one another to be the best possible version of ourselves that we can be. So we appreciate you all. Much love. Thank you for tuning to this episode of The Root of It All, where we're changing lives one podcast at a time. Know that Jesus loves you and we love you too.
Stay true and remember who you are. Never forget how you